Hello, and welcome to the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books. Today's episode, we're going to check out the unique and fabulous fashions worn by the old maids of Mercer Island and talk about how fashion can be one of the tools in solving pervasive social issues. I'm your host, Wendy Kendall, and I have big news to share. The first of my 5 books published with the Wild Rose Press, Cat Out of the Bag, is now available in paperback from Harlequin Books. See the outstanding new cover at harlequin.com. Cat is Catherine Watson, purse designer, sleuth, as Catherine moves from designer bags to body bags. She's uncovering clues to a murder. And check out my other books, finalist for Best Romantic Suspense at Killer Nashville, Snow Kiss Cookies to Die For. First grade teacher Desiree Tucker is on the brink of winter holidays with her new romantic boyfriend when danger encroaches on her joy. Terrifying secret Santa gifts show up for her in the classroom. As the stalker moves closer to the prey, Desiree doesn't know who she can trust. Her charming new man is one of the prime suspects. What can she learn from the legend of the Snow Kiss cookie? Just when she's starting to believe in magic again, she finds herself fighting for her life. And for those of you ready for spring, my rom-com mystery, Cherry Shakes in the Park. Bryson is training for track and field Olympic trials when his coach's brother disappears. The police find no cause for opening a case, but Bryson and coach disagree. What they uncover leaves Bryson cornered, his life at risk. Bryson is also plagued by mysteries of the heart. His ex, Marta, is back and stars in the acting troupe's weekend show in the park. She stomped on his heart once. Can he trust her with it again? Then there's Marta's co-star, Sinona. She charms Bryson over cherry shakes in the park. He's torn between rekindling his past or starting a new flame. Danger escalates during a midsummer night's dalliance at desolate Loon Point. Please check my website, wendywritesbooks.com, for more on all my books. And thank you so much to all the readers who've told me how much they're enjoying my books. My guest today is author Lynn Bohart, great writer of mysteries with intriguing characters facing danger lurking around every corner. And oh, the villains. After a 35-plus-year career as a nonprofit executive, Lynn owns her own freelance writing company, Lil Dog Communications, and writes for nonprofits and businesses all over the world. She teaches writing through Green River College Continuing Education and sat for 2 years on the organizing committee for the Seattle Film Summit. With a master's degree in theater, she loves bringing stories to life and has a loyal fan base who enjoy her wide breadth of mystery stories. Whether the stories involve a group of humorous senior sleuths in the Northwest, follow a clever detective in a small town in Southern California, or follow a woman who tracks a killer through the timber country of Oregon. Lynn's books are designed for people who love a solid mystery with a touch of paranormal elements thrown in for good measure. Welcome, Lynn Bohart, in pursuit of fashion and fiction.
Thanks, Wendy. That made me sound actually really good.
You are really good, Lynn. I'm one of the members of your loyal fan base.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah,
And I'm excited about your books. You're with Harlequin. Boy, that's exciting.
oh, it is exciting. But I'm telling you, your books are great reads. And I especially love your Old Maids of Mercer Island series. Will you tell us a little about the series and what inspired it?
My first book was Grave Douse, so it's the woman chasing killers through the timber country of Oregon, which is my only standalone. And then I started my Detective Giorgio Salvatore series, and I read a couple of Janet Ivanovich's books, And I loved her very snarky, funny characters. And I thought, I could do that. Um, and so I just started writing about four or five older women in a book club. And the critique group that I belonged to loved it and really encouraged me to keep going. The problem was with the first book, I'm a pantser, so I don't plot my books out in advance. I know you should, and I tell all my students that they should do that. Um, but I got stuck. I didn't have a story. I didn't have the crime. And it took me a few years until I was watching a documentary on sex trafficking. And cozy mysteries, of which you write, are very, we work in kind of within a little bit of a box, right? No graphic sex, violence, or language, but I wanted stronger crimes. And so I consider my books, the old maids books, as next generation cozy mysteries, because they're the crimes themselves are can be kind of horrific. And the sex trafficking, the very first book, In Keeping with Murder, is that. But that just pushed me along, and I didn't really know that it would be a series at the time, but it was so well received that I just kept going. And so now I just finished the sixth book in the series. Yeah.
Now, fashion is one of the ways that you visually distinguish each lady's personality for the reader. Can you describe how this works for these Mercer Island characters?
Sure. I have five older women who are main characters. And in the beginning, as I was writing the first book, my critique group were getting confused, frankly, between the women, and said you need to work on ways to distinguish them. So I not only worked on distinguishing their personalities; they have very, very different personalities, but on what they wore. So I'm gonna reduce our picture here and go to just something in the most recent book to give, because I'm assuming a lot of the people who watch this are other writers, of how I describe them. Because after, Wendy, when you have a series, you have to come up with new ways to describe your characters. So this is the new book, No Place Like Home for a Murder. And it's just take a minute here. So at 3 o'clock, Blair and Doe were nestled in my apartment as a chilly wind blew leaves around the parking lot outside. Doe serves as the CEO of her deceased husband's waste management company and had to leave an important meeting to join us. She was dressed in her usual black pantsuit and had her mammoth leather bag slung over her one shoulder when she arrived. It carried her laptop and God knows what else, but was big enough to sink a ship. After our first murder case, she had bought a gun, and I envisioned it might be tucked somewhere inside that bag. Blair came straight from a hair appointment, also dressed in her signature outfit. This meant her shapely figure was squeezed into tight leggings and a form-fitting, low-cut V-neck sweater, complete with 3-inch heels. The only unique thing about Blair's look was a new blue streak foiled into one side of her shoulder-length blonde hair. She's 63 years old. The blue matches your eyes, I said, handing her a glass of iced tea. I know, right? Not sure Mr. Billings will like it, she says, but since I'm getting close to 64, I'm not trying to impress anybody anymore. Doe choked, nearly spitting out iced tea. Blair gave her a suspicious glance, and I hid a smile, knowing exactly why Doe's throat had closed up at Blair's comment. Day or night, Blair dressed as if she were going out clubbing. In fact, as long as I'd known her, I'd never seen her dress casually. No jeans and t-shirt for her. She was always dressed to make an impression, and that impression was to attract men. And her list of 4 husbands proved it worked. So that's an example of how to visually let the reader know when the women are all in one room, kind of place them based on what they wear. And here's just one paragraph from the first book, because the first book is set at Christmas time, and this gives all four of the characters. Rudy is a sports jock, was when she was younger. So Rudy was dressed in a crisp denim shirt embroidered with poinsettias. That's perfect for Rudy. Doe was in an elegant red cashmere sweater and a green scarf, and Blair in a pair of tight black pants and a glittery stretch blouse designed to accent her best feature, so not her smile. I had on my favorite Christmas sweater with images of dogs wearing antlers embroidered all along the bottom of the sweater. So that's just an example of the four different, those are the four main characters, and the fifth character is April. She's an African American woman, so she is often dressed in very colorful, sort of geometric kinds of designs in her clothes, and has sometimes has beads in her hair and things like that. So that's how I so in every book I will clarify each character based on what they wear, on what their traditional type of outfit. Julia, the protagonist, is most comfortable in penny loafers. Blair can't imagine not wearing 3-inch heels. So we as people are all different. We as women are all different. I'm the tennis shoe type, but I don't think I've ever even worn 3-inch heels. Um, but that's how I worked to not only define that, but then throughout the book to remind readers which character I'm talking about. I'll often use what they're wearing to kind of re-identify them. If that makes sense.
It really does, and it really does emphasize again that what we talk about so often, that fashion really reflects personality so much.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
love
and
that.
Julia loves dogs. That's why it was perfect for her to have a Christmas sweater with, dogs with antlers. Um, so I try to stay true to the characters' personalities in what they wear, and in sometimes the comments they make back and forth to each other on what they're wearing, especially Blair, because she has kept herself in shape, obviously, and she can still wear the clothes that most of us, wore in our 20s. So anyway.
Oh, I just think that's great. And it's just so reader friendly too. I mean, readers just love it. I do. I love getting those fashion bites like that. And by the way, congratulations on this recent launch of the sixth book. Uh, the sixth Old Maids of Mercer Island. It's titled No Place Like Home for a Murder. Tell us a little bit more about
Right.
now this time. Tell us a little bit about the plot for this new mystery.
Well, and I know we'll talk in a minute about social issues, but for some reason, when I started this series, because I spent so long in the nonprofit world, social issues are important to me. And when I did the research for In Keeping with Murder, the first one that was talked about sex trafficking, I did a lot of research on that and realized that it's a worldwide problem. There is no stopping it. And it just kind of makes me sick to my stomach. So at the end of the book, I included a short paragraph encouraging readers, if they cared about this, to get involved in their own community. And readers appreciated that. I heard from a number of readers that said that they liked that aspect, so I did it again. And so in this book, I used homelessness. I work with two homeless organizations here in the Seattle area, and so the plot, again, based on another documentary I saw, I get ideas by watching TV. Um, homeless people start disappearing off the streets of Seattle. And Rudy, one of the main characters, volunteers at a homeless shelter, and she befriends a woman who finally gets out of the shelter and gets a job. And she used to be a landscape architect. And Rudy just asked, I'll pay you to come in and install, a fountain in my backyard. And so the woman does it. And in celebration, Rudy invites her over for dinner, and then the book starts out with the woman dead on Rudy's floor. And Rudy is, I'm not giving anything away because you learn this in the first chapter, but Rudy is framed for her murder. And it's all tied up. This woman was the one who she actually went to the police, and she came to Rudy because Rudy, what used to be an investigative journalist, asking her to do a story on these people that were disappearing off the streets of Seattle because no one was doing anything about it. So
Mm.
that's the basic premise of the book. And boy, do they get in trouble this time.
Oh boy.
It's yeah.
Now, can you talk about, I know one of your characters in the book sort of is helping the homeless with their appearance in the book. Can you talk a little bit about how that's done?
Yeah, I decided early on not to have, excuse me, the old maids like go undercover in the homeless camps. I thought really thought that would be too difficult to manage and to write. So instead, I have other parts of their team, of their circle that go in undercover in the homeless camps. They go undercover in the shelters. Rudy used to volunteer as an investigative journalist. She had been volunteering in the shelter, teaching women how to write resumes and cover letters. Well, she's accused of murder, so she can't do it anymore. So Julia and Blair take over. Julia will work with the women on resumes, and Blair, because she's a beautiful woman and she's obviously takes care of herself, she's talked into holding makeover clinics, and so she pays her hairdresser to go with her and to use what the women have, because clearly they don't have money, they don't have a lot to work with, but she does these makeover clinics helping them to look and feel better so that when they go to for a job interview or go out and meet people, they're feeling better about themselves. And so, and it's Blair who makes her character makes the biggest change in the book, because in the beginning she's one of those people that looks, she doesn't really look down on homeless people, but she's a little bit leery about them, and in the end she's their biggest supporter,
Mm.
which I really liked her story arc in the book.
Oh, that's fantastic. And this new book takes place in the fall in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
And
Right.
as you say in the book, I'm quoting, fall is the perfect time for a murder, especially in the Northwest when you're snuggled into your recliner with a hot cup of tea, holding a good British mystery novel while the temperature outside has dropped into the low 40s. That's exactly where I was on a Monday night in early November, dot, dot, dot. What do you notice about fashion that's specific to the Pacific Northwest?
Well, I grew up in Southern California, which is extremely casual, unless you're, part of the elite set. And I sort of inched my way north, living in Oregon and then Washington. And I think the Northwest for me is still casual. It's different. It's casual in a different way. It's not t-shirts and flip-flops, like what it is in California, partly because of the weather. But I remember going to my first black tie dinner as in the nonprofit world, and I dressed up. I tried to look fancy as much as I could, and was surprised when the president of one of the local colleges showed up in a very casual, almost like a Hawaiian shirt and slacks and casual shoes. And a number of people did that. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And nobody cared. It was, even though it had been sort of advertised as kind of a dress up event, that was very acceptable. And I've been here now for 18 years, and I've just seen that over and over again in the Northwest, that it's depending on where you are, like Seattle and Bellevue especially, is there's quite a bit of money in Bellevue, and so there's a lot of big black tie events and things there. And if you're a business person, you would probably dress pretty, um, strictly business. But everywhere else, and especially in the nonprofit world, it's very casual. So I like the fact that you can be your own person here in terms of what you wear and the statement that you make about yourself with your clothes.
Oh, nice. I like that. Yeah, I like your synopsis of that. Your old maids of Mercer Island are joined in their sleuthing by a helpful team of ghosts. Can you tell us the fun of writing paranormal aspects to your mysteries?
I have just always loved the paranormal, and I didn't want scary ghosts. So all my books, the standalone probably has the eeriest paranormal aspect of it because it's a little black obsidian bird that seems to hold the spirit of the woman's best friend who was murdered. And the Detective Giorgio Salvatore books have a young boy who killed himself. He was in a Catholic school and was abused by the priests and ends up hanging himself. So he's part of this. His spirit is still in this monastery, and when there's a murder there, Detective Salvatore ends up investigating it, and the young boy kind of attaches himself to him, and he's helpful, and his dad had been a police officer, and so it feels very normal to have him sort of connect to the detective. In the Old Maids, what I did is I created you can kind of see the house behind me. It doesn't exist on Mercer Island, but it's a big Victorian inn, and it had originally burned down and in back in the 1940s, and Elizabeth, the St. Clairs owned it, and John St. Clair, the husband, was gone, but his wife, daughter, and one of his sons and dog were killed in the fire. So Elizabeth and Chloe and the dog still haunt the inn. And I just have such fun with it because Chloe is funny in that she tends to tease people she doesn't like, especially kids who come to stay at the inn because it's a bed and breakfast. She'll move puzzle pieces or game pieces, or Elizabeth will, she'll slam doors and cupboards to scare people out that she doesn't like. But she's attached herself to Julia, so she becomes very helpful. And then when I was writing the first book, Wendy, I don't know why I did this, but I had wanted Julia's mother to be in the book, but I ended up killing her off before the book ever started. So she had passed away 6 or 8 months earlier. She starts calling Julia on her cell phone. And I remember going to my critique group with the chapters, that the first time I introduced that, thinking, oh my God, they're going to kill me. They're going to think this is the stupidest thing we ever heard. They thought it was hysterical. And people love it. And her mother is really snarky and has like a Lauren Bacall voice and stuff. And so it's just a range of ghosts who, like, her mother is really good at, she's in the great beyond somewhere, but she can manipulate electronics. So just at the right time, lights will go out, if Julia's being threatened, or street lights will burst, or the the stereo will go on really loud or something. So all of the ghosts kind of participate in a different way, um, to aid in the investigations. Because these women, my new tagline for the Old Maids is and I'm just going to forget it. Be fearless, like the Old Maids, because they are. They just keep getting into major trouble, but fortunately, they get out of it.
Oh, it's
We're lucky
awesome.
that way.
Yes, and it makes it a very, very fun and exciting read. And speaking of which, would you treat us to a reading from No Place Like Home for a Murder?
I will. I was going to do the first chapter, so they'll hear that first paragraph again, but I'll get through it quickly. So, fall is the perfect time for a murder, especially in the Northwest, when you're snuggled into your recliner with a hot cup of tea, holding a good British novel, while the temperature outside has dropped into the low 40s. That's exactly where I was on a Monday night in early November. Since I'd lost my black and tan miniature dachshund Mickey to a grand mal seizure a few weeks earlier, I had his best friend and partner in crime, Minnie, tucked in next to me, her warm little body giving me comfort. It was almost midnight, and I was due to be in the kitchen at 7 the next morning to help my partner, April, make breakfast for the guests. And yet I was happily nose deep in a book I'd found at a used bookstore. A brisk wind rattled the leaves of the big oak tree outside my window, scraping branches along the building. I shivered and settled in more deeply into the fluffy robe I had wrapped around me. When the grandfather clock in the inn's foyer finally chimed 12, and the echoes of its rich bells rolled across the old Victorian building I called home. I thought it was the perfect backdrop to follow D.I. Maple into the bowels of a century-old church as she chased a diabolical killer. My left hand rested on the soft red fur of Minnie's head as the young female detective opened a creaking door and eased her way into the chapel. She'd lost her torch in the chase, so her only light was from the moon as it filtered through a broken stained glass window, leaving fractured splashes of color on the dirty cobblestone floor at her feet. What a great description! My imagination filled in the images of a crumbling Victorian stone church with its tall steeple and belfry as I reached for my tea, when D.I. Maple heard a soft footfall from behind her. My pulse quickened, just what the author wanted. I took a sip of tea as the young detective whipped around and tripped over a dead body, face planting onto the dusty floor between two sanctuary pews. I almost spit out a mouthful of hot liquid as a chuckle erupted from my throat. Probably not what the author wanted. But since I had a habit of doing exactly the same thing at the most inopportune moments, I felt a sense of camaraderie with young D.I. Maple. I used a napkin to wipe my mouth and delved back into the story. My cell phone rang, making me groan with irritation. I pulled my phone off the table next to me, wondering who would be calling me so late. A glance at the screen told me it was my close friend and book club member, Rudy Smith. I swiped on the phone and said, Rudy, can I call you back? I'm right in the middle of, there's a dead woman on my floor. I'm sorry, what? I had a momentary brain fart as I wondered how Rudy knew there was a dead woman on the floor of that little chapel in Britain. And then I realized she was talking about something completely different. I dropped the leg rest of my chair and sat up, pushing poor Minnie unceremoniously onto the floor. Rudy, what are you talking about? I had a friend over for dinner and now she's dead. I don't know what to do. There's blood everywhere, she said in a rush. Slow down and tell me exactly what happened. I don't know. I'm confused, she said, taking deep, erratic breaths. Someone knocked me out, and I woke up on the floor of my kitchen next to her. There's so much blood, and my God, I don't know what happened. What's happening, Julia? What do I do? I still struggled to separate the murder mystery I held in my hand from, well, the actual murder Rudy was hyperventilating about. Did you call the police? Of course I did, but now what do I do? What do I say? I mean, there's a dead woman in my kitchen, she finally screeched. She was a heartbeat away from becoming hysterical, an emotion anathema to Rudy, so I attempted to modulate my tone. Well, don't touch anything, I said firmly. The police will want to dust for fingerprints. It's my kitchen, Julia, she snapped. I've touched every single thing in sight multiple times. Don't you get it? And there it was. She'd lost it. You know what I mean, Rudy, I said as calmly as I could. Don't accidentally step in the blood or anything. This is me you're talking to, Julia. I wasn't the one who sent the president of the university sailing headfirst into a pond at Carter's memorial service last month. That was you. I thought that was rather harsh under the circumstances, but technically correct. Listen, Rudy, what I mean is that you need to calm down. Julia, I need help, she said with a hitch in her voice. How did this happen? She was about to cry when distant sirens in the background reminded me she'd called the police. I realized Rudy's life was about to spin out of control. Look, sit tight. I'll be there as quickly as I can. Just meet me at the police station, she wheezed like a deflating balloon. I'm sure I'll be in handcuffs by the time you get here. Why? Because it's my favorite steak knife sticking out of her neck. So that's the first chapter to No Place Like Home for a Murder. And the title is based on Julia's absolute love of the Wicked Witch of the West and the Wizard of Oz. So yeah.
Well, thank you for that great reading. I loved it. And your mysteries are so engaging. Um, Tell us what's important for you as the author in creating your suspects. Just give us just a brief, quick
like
thought on
like
that.
any mystery author, I try to hide them. I try to, you want to pick somebody that not only readers won't focus on, but in the end, I want my readers to feel good about the fact that they're the one, the feeling of justification that, yep, that's the bad guy and he or she is getting what they deserve. So that's me.
That's awesome. Well, I do want to talk a little bit myself about fashion being an effective tool for kindness. And Lynn, your books really have sort of sparked some emotion on that topic for me too, as well as many of your other readers. And there's so many organizations that are working to help fight homelessness as the topic that you're dealing with in this latest book. So I'd like to highlight just one of these and encourage people to research for themselves ways that they can join in the efforts to help people out of homelessness. This organization is called lovepurse.org. And Maria
Good.
Castro is the founder and CEO. She started the project in March of 2021, and today they've collected and donated over 12,000 purses for women in need. And I'm going to let their website describe their effort the best. It's not just a purse, it's more than that. It can sometimes hold our most precious items, photos, makeup, nail file, IDs, cash, so many things. Something important that we need every time we walk out the door, and losing it means losing a part of you. Having to leave that behind is devastating. And that's why these purses hold so much meaning to the women they are gifted to. Each purse is filled with inspiration and intention to make each woman feel loved, valued, and respected. It's filled with, each purse is filled with feminine products, deodorant, soap, body lotion, hand sanitizer, toothbrush, toothpaste, mouthwash, lip balm, nail files, shower slippers, socks, face mask, comb, brush, full size shampoo and conditioner, face cloth, compact mirror, chocolates, mints, floss, notepad, pen, a few coins for good fortune, and most importantly, a note of inspiration. They're hoping that
It's a
each
great
item
idea.
is it, do you like
That is
that?
a great idea. Yeah.
Each item,
Because
go
the
ahead.
reality is homeless people, obviously they lose their home, but one of the biggest things they lose is their dignity. And something like that, just having that, I think helps to restore dignity for a
I'm
woman.
so glad to hear that from you. So yeah, I really am inspired with that. And anyone else who's listening that would like to find out more about this particular organization can Google them at lovepurse.org. So now, Lynn, you've used your great murder mysteries also as vehicles to shine lights on social issues. You've explored sex trafficking, child abuse, mental health, and bullying, now homelessness. How do you suggest people get involved with their communities? And do you have any stories of involvement from your readers?
I don't have stories from my readers, but I think getting involved, what you just did is a perfect example. Most nonprofits need volunteers. Sometimes, and if any of you who are listening are writers, they would love to have somebody come help write their newsletter or write a fundraising appeal or write a story about one of their volunteers or the people they've helped. People with bookkeeping skills, can help do their financial statements, or help with fundraising or marketing. I mean, I think there's a million ways that you can just reach out to a nonprofit and say how do you use volunteers and how do I apply, and then you can go in and talk to them and see if there's something that you can do for them. I think that's, besides money, obviously they always need money, but they always can use volunteers.
Oh, great idea. Yeah, it's something that people don't immediately think of. Tell me, what do you find the most fun part of the process of writing a book?
I for me it's partly creating the characters. I love bringing new characters into the book and sometimes creating wacky characters. The Old Maids of Mercer Island are slapstick. I mean, they're very humorous and I have a great time with that. But in terms of the process, one of my favorite parts of the process is editing, which I know a lot of writers don't like, but I love when I'm at that point where I can go back and start cutting and fine tuning and refining things. I don't know. That's when I see the story, the basic story start to really shine. I think that's my favorite part of the process.
Nice. Well, Lynn Bohart, thank you so much for sharing this fashion and fiction fun with us. Can you tell us what's coming up next for your readers to look forward to?
I'm working on the next book, but I think I'm starting a new series. I didn't know that I was going to do that, but in this most recent book, the in the key to murder, which is the poster behind me, one of Julia's hometown friends is killed, that who lives here in the Seattle area. And so in the book I just wrote, her brother says, "Hey, Carter was writing a book about that case that we worked on when we were kids. Remember that when we had to go find that guy's will?" And so I thought, okay, I'm going to write that book. So now I'm writing a book when Julia's only 12 and her brother is 15, and they solve a murder in Illinois where she grew up. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm really having a good time with that. And the other thing is I'm just launching on March 15th because I thought about doing a podcast like you, Wendy, but I just didn't know if I could commit to it. So I'm launching a monthly newsletter slash blog called Let's Talk About Murder. I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, so I'm going to be interviewing mystery authors, true crime podcasters, journalists, law enforcement personnel, forensic personnel. I have J.A. Jance lined up for October, Robert Dugoni this summer. My first issue coming out in a week. I interviewed the gentleman, the guy who vets my books. He's a retired chief of police, SWAT commander, and he used to run the law enforcement command center here. Um, so I'm just really excited about this because every month it'll be a written interview about the different aspects of crime and murder and how people talk about it, investigate it. Anyway, let's talk about murder, and people can just go to my website and sign up for that.
Yes, please, listeners, you'll want to check out the website, lynnbohart-author.com, and find out more about her books. And also, you didn't mention it, but read her very interesting The Magic of Writing blog too is there. And you're invited to my website, wendywritesbooks.com, to see my books and explore more on fashion and fiction. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join me next time for the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books.